So our first blind spot in this series was intimacy, and the potential blind spot that we've chosen for week 2 of this series is generosity. Now let me say this right up front. Generosity could be a tough topic for me to talk about because we're at a place that receives an offering, right? So instantly when you think generosity and I'm up front talking, you might think this is going to be a sermon about tithing or giving to the church. It's not. I will touch on it briefly at the end because I'm a pastor and this is a church. But this is not the focus of this message. And I really mean that sincerely. In fact, if you leave here today and on your way home, you or somebody in your car says, I told you all the church does ever is just ask for money. If that's your takeaway from today's message, then I want to be as blunt as possible. You, my friend, have a very real and dangerous blind spot in the area of generosity. In this sermon, this bus is going to be heading towards the town of generosity. But there's a very important spot and place that we have to pass through along the way. Have you ever met someone that's just always disappointed with life? Everything just seems to be a disappointment to them. They are disappointed about every meal at every restaurant they've ever had a meal at. Do you know folks like this? They are disappointed with everything from their job to the weather. And to take it a little further and maybe a little deeper, at times these folks are really disappointed with their friends. They're disappointed with their spouse. They're disappointed with their children. Nothing ever seems to be enough. No one ever seems to do enough for them. You never can seem to live up to the bar or to the expectations that they've set. Do you know someone like this? Sorry to be blunt again for the second time so early in this sermon, but I really believe this. Disappointed with life people are people that are ungrateful with life people. Can I just say that again? I want that to sink in a minute. Disappointed with life people are people that are ungrateful with life people. If you are continually disappointed by everyone and everything, then I think the core issue is gratitude. If you're a glass half empty person, maybe it's because you expect others or the world to give you more than you yourself are willing to give to people or to this world. If you are a short end of the straw person, I want to challenge you that maybe we ought to be more grateful that we just have a piece of the straw, right? My guess is across this world, there are many who would do anything for our piece of the straw or for our half-filled glass of water. See, we're never going to unleash generosity until we deal with this space in our heart called gratitude. I just want to ask you, do you want to be known as a generous person? Is that something that excites you? You're just sitting there right now and you're thinking to yourself, man, I hope my friends, I hope my family, I hope people that know me well would think that I am a generous person. And if you're not excited to be known that way at all, then what might be lacking is a grateful attitude, a grateful heart. I will go as far as to say that I think it's impossible to be a generous person unless you first become a grateful person. See, this sermon bus that we're on today is going to pass through the attitude of gratitude. And I am fighting some wicked allergies, so if I have to go over and do this about every 10 minutes, I just want to apologize. I virtually have nothing in the pipes. today. So, let me keep going. The sermon bus, when you use this illustration of a bus, is going to pass through the attitude of gratitude on its way to the city of generosity. And we're going to stop on this bus ride at 3 encounters that Jesus had with people, all from the book of Luke. So settle into your seats. There's a very religious man on the front row of this bus, and he's going to a dinner party at a Pharisee's house named Simon. And the first stop that we're going to take is in Luke 7, verse 36. And it opens this way. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house, and he reclined at the table. And behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she learned he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment. And standing behind him, behind Jesus, at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears, wiping them with her hair and her head, and kissed his feet and anointed him with the ointment. A Pharisee invites Jesus to dinner. Most likely there were many other Pharisees in the dinner party also. In walks what they say is a sinful woman from the city. That's basically a nice way of saying a prostitute. She stands behind him, sobbing uncontrollably. Note the 3 things that she did. Did you pick up on this? She wipes his feet with her tears. She kisses him, and she pours this perfume or this ointment on his feet. And then it goes on in verse 39. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answering said to him, that line, I just always love that line. Jesus answering him. He didn't say anything. He was saying that all in his head. Jesus says, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he answered, okay, say it, teacher. And Jesus goes on to tell this brief story about 2 people that owed a certain man money. One of the people owed this man quite a bit of money, and one owed him a little bit less. Neither of them could pay it back. So the man forgave both of them of their debts, wiped them clean, says there. And Jesus asked the Pharisee, which of them do you think appreciated it more? Who loved the man more? And Simon says, well, I suppose the one who owed more. And Jesus says, you're right indeedy. And then he turns to the woman, but he's talking to the Pharisees. Do you see this woman? And he goes on to report to the Pharisees exactly what she did from the moment she arrived. And then he forgives her of her sins, which are many. They're forgiven. For she loved much, but he who is forgiven little loves little. A couple things I want to unpack from this story. Having people to a dinner was this way of showing honor to someone, to a guest. Showing hospitality was extremely common in this culture. And you got to get this. It would have been expected of the host that when he invites a guest, that you were going to greet them at the door with a kiss. Common courtesy. That you were going to have someone, or you yourself, would wash their feet. And that if they were really a special guest, you might favor them with an anointing of oil or perfume on their head. Did Simon the Pharisee do any of that? No. But who did? The sinner from the city, right? Kissed his feet. She washed his feet with her tears and her hair, and she anointed him with oil, which she brought with her. Simon was a Pharisee. He was one of the good kids. You know, he spent his whole life trying to do what he was told and what he was taught. Why did he not offer a kiss or a foot washing or oil? Why did he not extend at least a basic common courtesy of generosity to a guest of people in this time and of this culture? I think because Simon felt Jesus should be honored to be in his house. I mean, I'm Simon, the Pharisee here. This is a teacher from this no-name town of Nazareth. He's lucky I even let him in. Now contrast that with the woman who crashed this party. She was so honored to simply be in his presence that she gave Jesus what she had. Her life has probably been a bus crash up to this point. She may not even realize what a mess her life is. But she is so grateful for his love, for his forgiveness, that she brings him what she has, a jar of perfume from her home. I don't know, maybe she has 4 or 5 more of these at home. Maybe this was her only one. But this is what she brought. What did Simon give Jesus? Nothing. Not even the standard hospitality. Can I ask you a question when it comes to gratitude? And more specifically, are you more like Simon, the Pharisee, or more like the woman from the city when it comes to showing gratitude to Christ? Maybe your life hasn't been a bus crash. Maybe your life has been going along okay. And at some point you invited Jesus onto your bus with you, right? You invited him into your life. And for the most part, it's been a pretty okay ride. Is it possible that the blind spot in our lives is that at some point we started thinking that Jesus was a pretty lucky guy just to be riding on my bus? You know, I mean, look at me. Coming to church, doing some helpful things. I'm certainly not nearly the sinner that many are. I mean, if Jesus were drafting people for his team, I'd be a pretty high pick. I'd be at the top of the board, right? See, folks, what we bring to Christ is an indicator of our affection and our gratitude for what he's done for us. Are you honored to have Jesus in your life? Or at times, do you think he should be honored that you let him in? You know, I mentioned this book a while back in a sermon. It was called, and I think I've got a shot of it, and it's in your notes if you want to grab it. More or Less, Choosing a Lifestyle of Excessive Generosity. The author, he talks about creating a baseline of generosity. And what he sets as the baseline, the low bar, that we need to give out of our excess. That is where generosity should start. What do you have or I have enough of? What could I do without? What do I have more than I need? Give some of that away to someone in need. Giving out of your excess. In the book, there's a story in there about someone that overspent just a little bit too much at Christmas time. And the credit card bills rolled in January, and they wanted to pay them off and complete. And when they did that, they really didn't have enough money for grocery shopping for that week. So what they decided to do was, we're not going to go grocery shopping for the next 10 days. We're just going to use what's in the house. We're just going to look around the house, make do with what's in the house, save that money. So they did. They started eating up leftovers in the refrigerator, hit the freezer a little bit, the pantry. 2 weeks go by, and they say, you know what? Let's just see how far we could go. 3 weeks go by. 4 weeks go by. They've emptied the freezer, obviously the refrigerator. They're hitting the pantry pretty hard. 5 weeks. 6 weeks. On the 7th week, they're eating the last thing of spaghetti noodles and a can of baked beans. He said it was not the most healthiest of diets, for sure. He gained 12 pounds, but they went 7 weeks, and it taught him the excess of a simple thing like food that he had in his house. Another person come to the realization in the book, they had an extra room in their house, excess room. And they made a commitment to put someone in that room that was in transition, that maybe needed a place to stay for a period of time. and he's made it a point to give away excess room in his house to someone in need. One last example from the book. This one guy found this organization that accepted gift cards that still had unused amounts remaining on them. How many of you have a gift card? Probably right now, maybe even in your wallet. You have them in a drawer at home. And there was a $50 gift certificate, say, and you used 35 of it or whatever. Well, he found this organization that would take these and give the unused portions away to charity. So he had a party at his house, told everybody in advance that they were going to be carded at the door. And they had to bring in every gift card that they had. And the people agreed. And that one night, they sent $600 of unused gift cards to an organization that was then turned around and given away in charity. We all have excess in our life, right? We all have excess time, excess influence, excess money, excess food, clothes, a room, car. What if we sat down with a really grateful heart and thanked God for what we have in our life and said, I am so grateful, I just want to give some of the excess away. See, in this area of generosity, what are you bringing to God? Like the woman, are you so grateful just for his love and forgiveness that you're bringing what you have? She had this jar of perfume. I don't know what else she had, but that's what she had and that's what she brought. Or sometimes are we more like Simon? Jesus has shown up, but we really haven't given him anything. All right, second stop on this bus ride. There's 9 lepers that have an appointment at a priest office in the back of the bus. Luke 17, verse 11. On the way to Jerusalem, he was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, this is Jesus they're talking about here, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance and lifted up their voices saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. When he saw them, he said to them, go and show yourself to the priest. And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, he turned back, praising God with a loud voice, and he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. 10 lepers standing at a distance because they were not permitted to come close to anybody. If you know the story of leprosy in this culture, that they were not permitted to be in contact. They had to stay a certain amount of distance away from everybody. They're standing at a distance screaming. You have to know something else about folks at this time. They would have lost everything. They would have lost their family, their children. They would have lost every possession that they had. They would have forfeited their employment or their job. They would have lost it all. And they somehow heard about Jesus, though, I guess. They yelled out, maybe it's true, he could heal. And Jesus, did you notice this? He doesn't heal them on the spot, does he? He says, go. He didn't say you're healed and go. He said, go and show yourself to the priest. And it says, in the going, as they were walking to find the priest, they realized that they were cleansed, right? Why did Jesus send them to a priest? This is so important, folks. You got to get this, okay? Only the priest had the authority and the power to declare them clean. Once the priest proclaimed them healed, they could get their stuff back. They could be reinstated and reintegrated into society. Only the priest could have declared them clean. And somewhere along the way to the priest, you got to picture this. Just imagine it for a moment. These are folks that are walking to find this priest whose body, their skin, blistered. It was rotting. Leprosy is a disgusting disease. And they're healed. 9 of them keep going to the priest to be cared clean to get their stuff back. But one of them turns around, just one, and goes and shows thanks to the one that healed him. And when he arrived, Jesus says, "Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" And he said to him, "Rise and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." Do you feel Jesus' pain in that? I do. When I read that, I just sense his pain. Like, where's the rest of them? No one came back to say thanks? Just one? I wonder what this guy said. No, I don't know. They went to see the priest to get their stuff back. Maybe they'll come back later. Why at Northway, at all of our campuses, do we typically open with 25 minutes or so of worship? Why don't we do just a song or two and then get to the other stuff? The sermon and the offering and the sending, right? Because we need to pause and be grateful in worship. The response of those 9 lepers breaks our Savior's hearts as they hurriedly went off about their stuff. But one healed leper's response is grateful worship. And I know that there's many ways to worship and show thanks to God other than just singing and praising God at a worship service. I know that. But hear me on this. God desires our worship, and not because he needs it, because we need it. That one leper, my guess is he still went on, right? I mean, after he praised God and thanked God, my guess is he then went on to the priest so that he could get his stuff back. But the first thing he did was he just had this sense of awe, like, my goodness, I got to go back. And I got to thank him. When it comes to this area of grateful and gratitude, when it comes to worship, have you lost your sense of awe of this Son of God, Jesus Christ? Have you lost that? Oh my Lord, what have you done for me? You sent your Son on a cross, dead, buried, raised again, just for me? Have we lost that? 9 folks with leprosy did. 1 did not. I was sitting with some folks from Northway the other day, and one of them was telling us about a recent vacation that he just took. One of those ones where you get several, family, sons and daughters and brothers and sisters, and he rented a big house near a beach. And when they arrived there, he took his 3-year-old grandson out towards the beach. And it was one of those beaches where there was like a dune that sort of hid the ocean. And his 3-year-old grandson had never seen the ocean before. So it was the first time, and they come up over that dune, grandfather with this 3-year-old. And he said the boy just froze and went, wow, and then just headed for it. You know what I mean? If you got a 3-year-old. And for the next 20 minutes, it was a nonstop ball of wow. I mean, running to the edge of the ocean, running back, just picking up the sand, running around in circles, singing songs and playing it. Nobody had to do anything with him except make sure he didn't drown. That was it. He was just having an absolute ball. See, when we're grateful for all Jesus did, that is the way that we live life. That is the way that we worship our God. If you're living continuously disappointed, I just wonder if you haven't lost your sense of gratefulness for Christ. If you've not worshiped God passionately for some time, I just wonder if there's not a little bit more than 9 with leprosy in you instead of the 1 that came back, that wasn't in such a hurry to get his stuff, to come back and thank and worship, the one that gave him all of the stuff. There's a line in a country song, and I don't know the artist, but I think it's It's called I Hope You Dance or something like that. And there's a little line that says, I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean. Man, I hope I still feel small in the presence of a great God with a grateful heart and attitude. Third bus stop here, okay? Third and last stop. There's a wee little man in the back of the bus that wants off, but no one's letting him pass. I just think it's funny to say a wee little man. A wee little man wants off the bus, but no one will let him pass. He's a despised man. He's a traitor to his own people. Basically, in this time and culture, he would have been the scum of the earth. He's had the power and the authority to take what he wants from people, and because of it, he has made himself a very wealthy man. And in Luke 19, verse 2, Jesus has arrived at the town of Jericho, and behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was small in stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to that place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry, come down, for I must stay at your house. So he hurried down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, so the crowd that's watching it, they grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Lord, behold, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, since he is also a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Did you notice something in there? Jesus did not preach to Zacchaeus. He didn't tell him a parable. He didn't lay any thou shalt nots on him. He didn't ask Zacchaeus how much he stole, and he didn't call him sinful. This was a man that was hated by his own people for skimming taxes off the top and ripping off his fellow countrymen for years. And all of a sudden, there is this explosion of generosity that just erupts out of this wee little guy's heart, right? He did not just return what he should have. He first said, half of everything I got, let's just start right there and give that to the poor. And if I've done anything to defraud anybody in this place, I'm going to give him back 4 times what I owe him. Why? Because Jesus went to his house. And it caused this generosity just to explode out of the honor of just having Christ in his presence. There's an insert in your notes today at all campuses. Looks like this. It's a thank you. It's a result of an explosion of generosity from you, Northway, across all campuses. In February, in a sermon, I talked to you about Hope's House, the foster care network that Sam and Ruth Schock co-founded in China. And they had been raising money to buy a new, larger place in China for a few reasons. One, so that they could take in more kids. And 2, if they bought it, they wouldn't have to pay rent. They could take the rent money they've been paying and aim that right back at the ministry. And they had raised about $150,000 of the 170 or so that they needed. And I just came to you and simply said, let's knock this out. Man, if it's on your heart and you want to do something, please do so. And you did. We went by that number. We sent it to them. They found a larger place. They bought it. And soon, in the next month or so, they're going to be moving into it, which means they're going to be able to take more kids in. So thank you for your explosion of generosity. You know, there's another couple, and it's on the back of the insert, that have been doing work there for a long time and want to go permanently and be with them and help. So there's information on there if that's something that would interest you in getting involved with. You got to hear me on this, though. You know, We never know what a little explosion of generosity from us could do. Maybe you were one of those folks that gave to this cause. There are some kids that are dying in an orphanage that may now be able to come to their home, be rescued, be nursed back to health, and be adopted by a family that desperately wants children. And that little guy or gal might grow up to be somebody that becomes incredibly generous and grateful. See, if we could change generosity from a blind spot to a bright spot, there is no telling what could happen in this church or in this city or in this world, but most importantly, in our own hearts. And see, and this is where it gets tricky for me as a pastor to talk about generosity at a church that receives an offering from you. The moment that I start talking about generosity, it feels like I get a little invasive. I sort of enter your turf a little bit, right? For many years, when it's offering time at church, I've always tried to train myself to say that we're going to receive your offering now. I never try to say that we're going to take an offering, because you don't want me to take anything from you, do you? If I take your money, what am I? A thief, right? So, I don't want to take it. I want to receive your offering. It's whatever's on your heart that you decide to give. As a church, we're going to receive it. In fact, at all of our campuses, we often say, if you're a guest here, if you're visiting, if this is your first time, have no obligation to give it all. We're just thrilled that you're here. I don't want anything to stand in the way of you hearing the message of Jesus Christ. However, this is something that I just know. Money is so connected to the core of our souls. But you absolutely have to hear me on this. If you're going to live a life that God has created for you, if you want to live a life that's truly free, if you want to experience amazing life to the full, you're going to have to deal with this issue of generosity. Generous people are happier people. They just are. Some of the most miserable people I know are greedy people. Generous people are some of the most wonderful people I have ever met, and greedy people are some of the most soulless people I've ever met. Generous people, right? They want to give, and greedy people want to take and take and take and take. Please hear me on this. The church does not need you to be generous nearly as much as you need to be generous to truly be set free. That's the real heart of this message. Zacchaeus exploded with generosity simply because Jesus went to his house. And if you have invited Jesus into your house, then it is there that he is residing, and that should be reason enough to be generous and to be grateful. And I want to tell you this, I'm not ashamed to ask you to give to this church, because this is a great place to give. We are determined to reach the lost in and around this city for Christ. We are determined missionally to reach orphan, abandoned, and at-risk children locally and globally. And you have my word that I am determined to steward your giving responsibly. I told you this sermon, it's not on giving. So I'm not going to talk about tithing 10% or anything like that. As I told you in the beginning, what this sermon is about is 3 encounters with Jesus that illustrate that we've got to pass through this town of gratitude in order to get to the town of generosity. See, when we're powerfully confronted with who Jesus is, the outpour should just be generosity to people that are God places in our lives, to causes that he puts on our heart. So in fact, I just want to close this service just a little differently today. And at the bottom of your outline that you have in your notes, you're going to see something that says, I think I call it the quiet experiment. There's some blank lines there. In a moment, I'm just going to pray. I'm going to lead us in a prayer. And then at some point, I'm just going to stop and allow some silence to come over the room. And I just want to encourage you to use that time of quiet to ask God to search your heart in this area of gratitude and generosity. And maybe he will place a cause on your heart. Maybe a person is going to come to mind. Maybe a dollar amount is going to be placed on your heart. I would encourage you to write it on the blank. Pray about it and think about it over the coming days. Ask somebody maybe to talk to you about it with you and see, if you came with a husband or wife or friends, talk about it. What do you think this might mean? And then I would encourage you to act on it. Because generosity is an action word. So I'm going to pray. There'll be a pause, and then at each of our campuses, their leader will step up, sort of close out that moment and pray for our offering. So let's pray together. God, I come to you as a person that has wrestled with this subject as I've written this sermon. I've taken this bus ride over the last week or two and stopped at each of these stories and really had to examine my own heart in this area of gratitude and generosity. And right now, Lord, as we all sit before you, would you just search us? Would you speak to each of us in this area?